When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
Hey everybody, just before the episode begins, I wanted to start out by saying thank you to Clark, our guest on today's episode. And if you are looking to actually attend that conference in Wisconsin 2024, you can get 10% off with our unique code HTML, all the things, in all capitals, no spaces, no dashes, no nonsense. Again, HTML, all the things is the code. That'll be in the show description, as well as on htmlallthethings.com in our show notes. Thanks to Clark for the promo code. And if you, again, want to get those tickets, 10% off, use that promo code. Let's get to the episode. That's right, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things podcast. This episode is titled, What is That Conference? With Clark Sell. Now, I'm not going to dive too much into it because we're going to cover a whole bunch about that conference, but we're also going to touch on things like community and other important aspects of this industry. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And remember, we also have a Scrimba affiliate link, and it may be a discount code. We are still working on the details, and we've recorded these well in advance. So if it is a discount code and it has some sort of discount affiliated with it, that will be disclosed on htmlallthethings.com in this episode's show notes. Now, Clark, our guest today, of course, has worked at some big name companies such as Allstate, Microsoft, and Telerik. But these days, he is the founder and CEO at That Conference, a developer event that promotes a healthy community environment filled with fun, tech, and learning. Our conversation will explore not only that conference, but also the importance of community and its exchanges. We're going to dive into some pretty interesting things that I've never really thought about. You know, when someone kind of joins a Discord real quick or joins a forum real quick, they have no skin in the game, and they just ask a quick question like, hey, you know, my teacher told me to do this programming problem and I don't know how to do it. You know, can you just help me? Can you just kind of do it for me? And that's more transactional versus you can kind of get more involved with the community, right? Where you can be helping people, you can be asking some questions, and, you know, some months you may be more transactional where you're in a bit of a hurry and you have, you know, 5 or 6 rapid fire questions, and other months you might be giving back to the community. And we're going to be talking about that and the importance of giving back to the community, of course. And I've already mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, but remember, we do have that promo code if you're looking at attending Wisconsin 2024, that conference. You get 10% off if you use the code HTML, all the things, all capitals, no hyphens, no spaces, none of that. That will be in the show description as well as in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. Now, without further ado, let's cut to the interview with Clark right now. All right, everybody, we have Clark here on the line. And before we jump into this loaded episode, Clark, how's it going? What's up? And what have you been working on?
I am good. Thank you for having me on. What have I been working on? Client work, that conference, dad stuff, that conference, me stuff, those kind of things. Life.
So you're not full-time that conference. You also do client work? Are you like a freelancer as well, or?
Oh, I am full-time that conference and full-time freelancer. So a little bit too much on both sides of things.
Fair enough. I'm sure Mike and I have had those moments. We've been having quite a hectic couple of months. We've had a couple of, more than a couple 16-hour days, you know, in a week even sometimes. It's been a little bit chaotic, but hopefully things will alleviate soon enough. And of course, we're here to talk about that conference, but we're also going to be talking about a little bit of community stuff and, you know, the importance of community, the importance of podcasting, and, you know, kind of outreach in the community as well. So I'm just gonna jump right in here, and I know that some people are going to be new to this completely. They're not going to know what that is. So would you be able to maybe sum up, you know, what that conference is in a single statement for a complete newbie?
Single statement, I'll do my best, but a conference for software engineers and their families But really, I would say a community of, geeks and their families who want to help one another throughout the year, kind of raise up and level up.
Okay, so like just a sort of a question on that then. So like I've never been to, that conference. I've never been to actually like a programming conference or expo or something, but from my personal experience, when I go to like an expo or I go to a conference or something, it's more so either like strict business meeting, kind of like go to this meeting, then go to this one, then go to this one, and there's presentations, or it's like a sell fest, right? It'll be like a Comic-Con where it's like, hey, buy our comic books, buy our collectibles, talk to the celebrities, do all the other stuff. So where does that sort of fit in there on like sort of a scale, do you think?
The best part is nowhere, and it's somewhat intentional. Once a year, we have a conference. Well, twice a year. I think of it as a family reunion. I think of the time that we're together as, there's a set of behaviors, if you will, that we try to invoke. Some of that's learning, some of that's networking, some of that's, soft skills based, some of that's fun. And essentially we rent a resort and, convert it to a campsite and try to have fun inside of that. So, yes, we have sessions, they're eyes forward, educational type things. We have things called open spaces. That's a much more unstructured conversation. We have keynotes, we rent out the water park. It's really meant to be a family reunion of sorts where, you get to see your tribe once again, get to expand your tribe. And then when you go forth the rest of the year, you've got people that are in your corner.
So based on that, then, would you say, you mentioned family reunion and sort of like a lot of like community stuff in there. If you were to, and I believe there is actually a mission statement on your website, but if you were to sort of state the mission statement, would it be almost in that same vein? Like it's, sort of a family reunion, it's bringing people back together, or is there something like a little more formal that you would think would be that mission statement?
I should probably really write one, but my mission would be to bring people together and help them network, help them build a tribe. So when they walk down a path in life and need to pivot, need to learn, they know that there's a community of folks there to help. And I've been trying to clarify, like, we're not trying to create a community as much as we are trying to contribute to the community that exists. Right? I mean, I'm just a facilitator, right? I pay the bills, I write the checks. I'm an active participant in this community as well. And yes, we happen to have a conference, but the conference is, it's just an instantiation of us all getting together and being able to do things that we do well in person. It doesn't, communities 365 days of the year for as long as you're there. And some days you're going to participate in it. Some days you're going to lurk. Some days you're going to need it. Some days you're going to contribute to it. And I think all of those things, that's the important part for me, is that exists in harmony such that people can grow, people can learn, people can teach, and it should work for, kids who want exposure to tech and, I don't know, old ass adults like myself who, been around the block a few decades.
I'm just curious. I think this kind of plays right into what you just said, but like picture yourself as a complete newbie. You've just started learning. You're maybe 3 months into your journey. Do you think that conference, or maybe even just specifically conferences in general, are a good place for them to step into? Someone that's just started learning in the first, 6 months of their journey, let's say, to give a good landscape. What would you give them the advice on for these kinds of conferences, that conference, all the other ones that exist?
I'll break the landscape down in kind of maybe 3-4 kind of areas, right? You've got your code camps, call them, if you want to put $1 around them, depending on where you live, they're a 1 day, a free lunch, maybe you don't pay anything, few sponsors. You have us, which is kind of in the middle. And then you have like big for-profit conferences like Microsoft and AWS reInvent, whatnot. And kind of on that spectrum, and I'm kind of painting the scale because I think it's important to make the distinction. On the side that's kind of the for-profit, even if they're a loss leader, at the end of the day, the people that go are kind of the product, right? They're selling to you. They want you to kind of be in their corner, buy their things, pay for their service, whatnot. And on the other end, it's this super altruistic, like, hey, let's kind of just get together and do a thing. And we're in the middle of like, you need to have sponsors to pay for the bills, whatnot. But at the same token, like, I have a day job. It's a community-based thing. So to your point of like, is it good for somebody who's new or say a college kid, whatnot, to get involved? yeah, like I think it's this superpower because just like anything learning, the faster you can learn from others' mistakes or learn how to network or grow yourself in a way that you maybe didn't expect, the faster you will propel through whatever it is that you're doing. So there's this bit of I have a bias to it. Obviously, I created a conference to facilitate it, but I was the person who learns through others and wants to kind of take the experiences from others and either replicate it or not replicate it if it was a bad experience on their part. So my kid's getting ready to go to school. I'm preaching like, how do you build a network? What user groups or associations or things that are kind of applicable to get at? And it's not just one, it needs to be multiples. For me personally, I'm part of an entrepreneurial group. That's the founder, owner, business side of things to where I can have those conversations. I'm part of tech groups. I go to conferences. I go to user groups. Like all of those fill different gaps for me. And I think the more you get involved and grow that network, the better chances you have of, I don't want to say survival, but just growing, growing with others. It's kind of like buying a course, right? Like, people put out courses. We all could write them, but we choose not to spend thousands of hours doing the research to write the course ourselves and then take it. We trust the person who wrote the course, then we take the course. And I think of user groups and things like that. How can I get exposure to things? How can I get those little snippets faster at a rate that I can afford, whether that's time, money, whatnot, and grow?
What do you think the importance of, and it sounds like you do think it is important, but so there's some people will use a community just as a support forum. And I don't mean like emotional support or anything like that. I mean quite literally like, hey, I have like a variable that's broken, or like this variable doesn't work, this loop doesn't work, whatever, right? Like actual getting into the syntax and the weeds of coding on whatever. And they'll kind of pop in, ask a couple questions, get the answer, whatever, and then they're gone. And we sort of have that, just to sort of give an example, we sort of have that on our Discord server where it's treated more like a place just to ask questions. Yeah, it's very like, hey, thanks, whatever. And it's cordial, like it's fine. It's not like there's like a major problem there. But it's not like we all know each other and we're all sort of like, there's no sort of, I don't know, soft skills involved there almost in a way. So what do you think about that? Because I know that some newbies, like, because I know Mike was asking about that angle, some newbies will be, so inundated and so sort of almost overwhelmed by learning the sort of hard skills, learning the syntax of things really, that they will be like, okay, I need to, get these side projects done. And they won't put any sort of stock in the more sort of soft skills community angle.
Yeah. I'm a big person on like leverage the right mediums that you have. Tech has come so far in the past, been doing this 25 years. To think that we could be sitting here on a web browser recording a podcast using, fancy microphones and all this crap. Like 5 years ago, you were like, oh, only wizards could do this kind of stuff. And I think, the transactional, if I go back to the behaviors, syntax is the easy part. I can remember teaching my kid math when he was young, and I'm like, you need to understand the why. You're going to go into the next class, the next semester, whatnot. If you don't understand the why of this, when you get to the next one, you're really not you're just going to keep falling further and further behind. And I think of tech in that same way too, right? It's great to like transactionally like, oh, I figured out this promise. It's like, great, but do you know what a promise is? Like, do you know why you use it? Do you know the impacts on why you use it? So some of the things, especially in today's day and age with AI and whatnot, you really have to ask like, do you really need to ask a transactional thing? Like, are you contributing in the community itself? Are you being a participant of it? Has to use your words earlier, like, has the mission statement of why we exist here been explicitly stated and clear? Because there's a point where that becomes kind of taxing on other individuals. Like, well, why am I just answering your question when all of these tools exist? Like, come at me with like the real hard problem where it really deserves another human, not a what's wrong with this syntactical thing that I could have just gone and figured out. So all of them are pieces, right? They're all valuable. Just depends on the context of the thing that's going on. And that's that's kind of the hard part, right? There are times where you just need the rubber duck to go, I've been doing this for 16 hours and I cannot figure it out. And there's other times where somebody's just being lazy and it's like, can you do the homework for me? And they're all part of it.
Yeah, it's certainly sort of a tug of war almost between, wanting to be almost like you want to be a developer versus, someone who, I mean, Mike and I work with a lot of small business guys where they'll just try to do it themselves, right? And they have no, stock in the game. Like they don't want to become a developer. They just need this slider to stop flipping upside down accidentally or something.
Yeah.
Right. So then the guys that'll just pop in and be like, hey, I don't know what's going on here. Somebody help. And they'll do that on, 8 forums or something like that, a bunch of Discord groups just to sort of get in there. And they're not, trying to be.
They're not the right actor. Right. And so then I would say like, okay, well, what has led that person to feel so free to take the time away from others, right? What have we done that makes it feel like they can just come in and take and then not give back? Is there a way that you could make the exchange such that they have to put in more work and maybe potentially find out the answer on their own, but also free up the time of those who may be so inclined to help them, right? And so I've had a lot of people, like, let's say you want me to like review your abstract. Well, I'm going to make you fill out some homework, because if you're not willing to do that, why should I take an hour of my billable time out of the day to go do that? And you'd be surprised, 50, 60, 70% of the people won't do that. I got no problem asking a question and want you to give. But when you ask for it to be like, we're going to do this, and in a half hour, I need you to do this so that we can go through that. And then it's like, skirt, I can't do that. I don't have time. It's like, okay, well, crisis averted.
I like this transactional sort of look at a community because you're right. Like it's interesting when someone, especially asks a complex question, right? And it will take like a while for even, someone who's experienced, unless they've done that exact thing recently or something, to figure out. And it's sort of like, they just show up and go like, well, I hope if I scattershot all these communities that like someone will spend the 2 hours to sort of figure it out. And it's sort of like, maybe in an emergency status, maybe, but like if you're not really like there's no transaction there. It's very like, give me this. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah. And that's an unfortunate, there's a place for it. I would be the type of person that's like, we're going to put this box around it and it can go there. If you want to participate in that, like that's where we're going to do this. Otherwise, these are these other things that we're going to do. And it's hard. It takes work, right? Any community, any user group, any conference, it doesn't matter whether it's tech or not tech, right? The founders, if you will, the people who are kind of leading the community also have to be involved and have a suite of advocates who will live to the ideals that you expect, right? Because not one person can really police all the things. I mean, unless you're getting into like a Stack Overflow, which is gamified and all that, but you gotta have your tribe that wants to nurture it, care and feed it, make sure that it's upholding to what it's supposed to be.
Can you actually talk a little bit more on that topic? Because like, for instance, the HTML All Things community, we do have like a little bit of a tribe, right? We have some really, really dedicated members, and they've been super amazing over the years. Like, and it's been probably 4 or 5 years for some of them. They've been with us. And I feel like as the leaders of that community, we haven't done enough for them, and we haven't done enough to nurture the relationship, to create that relationship between each other. And because of that, obviously, like they just don't spend a ton of time there on a day-to-day basis. We, like Matt and I, don't have a ton of time, but neither do you, Clark. So you still somehow manage it. Can you give us as like creators, as people that are trying to start a community or trying to nurture a community, some advice on where to go next to nurture those like really great people?
I mean, it takes time. I don't want to hear that, but maybe there's a place where there's a once a month, once a quarter, big ass Zoom call where everybody jumps on and, feeds the kind of special sauce of what do people want to hear and see. There's a piece of like enabling others to do what they need to do. And look, I'm not the best at it either. It's hard, but you have to enable others to get involved, to feel empowered, to kind of run with things, and also still have checks and balances in place and all that kind of stuff. But it might be as simple as asking them, right? How can we just be a better unit given the culture that we have, right? What resources do we need? Maybe the opportunity cost is unseen at the moment. It just needs more people. Maybe there's a better way to collaborate in a more private space for those who are, the advocates, if you will, and really, get them on the phone and talk, right? I think that really gets into the weeds of involvement. Then you can do stuff, right? Once you have a stack of things that they think they can or want to do, then you can go after it. You can start to recruit others, the whole nine. The reality is then you got to do it again. Maybe that's in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, because everything moves fast, right? Today you got one project, maybe you're slammed, and in 6 months you don't. Somebody has a kid, now their family things are taking up time. Maybe there's a death in the family, right? There's just, life happens. So there has to be enough, critical mass to continue it through. Otherwise people will get burned out, and then it just kind of goes into whatever way you want it to. And for some, maybe that's okay, right? Maybe the anarchy of a community is acceptable. I don't know.
I think this is a good time to ask this, is because, like, obviously you've created that conference, and, it sounds like it was sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, out of the need or the want to have, this community. But, we've talked to many, many people in the community, some even on the show, where when they want a community, they'll just quite literally make a blog, right? Maybe have a comment section, maybe have a Discord associated with it. Some people will go as far to say have like a hackathon here and there where they're just like renting a small room somewhere, that type of thing. And I'd like to, kind of dive into that as to, what inspired you to create that, and also why go as far as to take on the challenge of creating a full conference.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm psycho on that regards. I will say in tech, I think one of the special things happens that all these community things do happen. And I think it's important to our existence as professionals in what we have. We have a very dynamic, fast moving pace thing. It's a very small community. I know we like to play like it's big, but if you compare it to other industries, we're tiny, immature, in so many facets of our history. But we're also very unique in the fact that we can interact with people from all over the globe. We have the ability to speak a lot of common languages, right? There's just a lot of different attributes about tech that make the community aspects of things super cool. There's also this aspect of people want to help one another that I think is a little bit more prevalent in tech than it is in some of the other industries. So to your point, like, hey, I just had a hackathon or a blog or all of them are important, right? And all of their things, even if it's the same thing that somebody else has, but you're super passionate about it, you may just have a different voice that resonates better with a set of audience. And that audience can be 10, it could be 10 million. It really doesn't matter. Now, for me, I don't know, the human aspect was important, just why we wanted to get together in person. I happen to live halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee. And if you think about the geographic area where we live, Chicago's got a bunch of things going on inside the city, outside the city, inside Milwaukee, outside of Milwaukee, in the Twin Cities. Like, it goes on. And our goal was really to create a place that we could bridge all of the things. There was no kind of common reunion of hey, I would like to learn about Ruby even though I'm a .NET person, or I would like to learn about this even though I'm not. And, wouldn't it be great if we could all just leave the city, if you will, and go to a place that'd be fun, get together, really, buckle down for 4 days and really lean into being present, on a set of, whatever sessions. And so that's what we did. And, arguably maybe did it backwards. This is 2010 when we started this. So good, bad, or indifferent. We've been around a while. Would I change things? Absolutely. But, today's also very different. You got Discords and Slacks and Twitters and, the world has evolved differently. But I still believe in the human aspect, whether it's video like we're doing now or getting together in person. Not that there's anything, I'm not downplaying online stuff. I just think they both complement one another, nor can either replace one another. So,
and we definitely kind of saw that during the pandemic, like first out, right, or like right away, because people were like, "Well, we're doing video calls," and then eventually the video calls would start becoming like,
"Yep,
doing video calls,"
and another video call.
Yeah, it's oh look, my phone's ringing with a video call. Right. So like it just starts getting to be, you know, more monotonous than like just popping out to the, you know, whatever, the bar or the golf course or wherever that you go to meet people, the conference, and, you know, et cetera.
You miss the acoustic space that's created when you're together. You miss the physical energy that is felt when you're together. You miss the ability for others to get involved, to kind of diverge from where you're at. You miss the body language. Like there's a lot that's just not present when you're on a camera, right? It's easy to check out, be like, I got other stuff to do. You know, it can feel transactional, like to our earlier point about coming in and asking for help on syntax, right? That can be a super transactional thing that you just light them up, knock them out, get them done, move on. And kind of none the wiser, right? You're like, we're going to hang up and I'm not going to see you. Not really going to, I'm not going to really know how you feel about a certain thing. I'm not really going to be able to see how you play against it. So
I think I miss the spontaneity more than anything.
Yeah.
Because like the Zoom calls, usually you know who's going to be there. One person talks at a time. It's way too structured for me. And yeah, it's good for certain situations, but when you're at a bar or when you're at like a, you know, camping or whatever, you meet people, you meet new people, and you have like side conversations, you connect on different things. It just, you can't really replicate that. You can pseudo replicate it a little bit with like breakout rooms and whatever you want, other jargon you want to call it. It's not the same thing. Like even yesterday, I was even just changing my tires and I just met a random dude there. Had a great, like he gave me a bunch of advice. He was a 70-year-old guy from Iran, and he gave me like his whole life story. And I love that. Like, I mean, that's not going to happen on a Zoom call. Nope. It's just not going to happen. And that's what happens at stuff like conferences. That's what happens at meetups. It's different. It's a completely different experience. Yeah. It's something I definitely missed during the pandemic times when like you just didn't have the spontaneity.
Yeah. We had this rule at the conference that it's called the Pac-Man method. But essentially, if you think of Pac-Man's got a slice that's taken out of it. Essentially, no matter where you're at, like leave space for somebody else to join the conversation. Because if you're sitting at a table and all the seats are taken, somebody's going to keep walking, and it's a very subconscious, but it's not inviting by any stretch. And the whole point of when we get together is to be able to like broaden aspects and meet as many new people as you can and hear the different experiences. And so, you know, I very much push on the fact it's like leave an empty chair. If the circle fills up, add another chair to the circle. Leave a little gap in where you're chatting. And of course, there's times where it should be, you know, it's a one-to-one and, you know, you're in a thing. Totally get it. But the network effect that happens just by creating the opportunity for others to join in, it's something else. You know, when people really do it, to your point of the spontaneity, right? Yes, it's a planned behavior, if you will, but it's an unplanned outcome that comes as a result of it. It's an amazing thing.
I like that point that you made, Mike, is that, you know, obviously, like, we're not going to have some random person, like, walk by our Zoom call right now, you know, where it's just sort of like, hey, hang on, like, we're trying to do a podcast here, and someone's like, well, hang on, I got, you know, whatever, and, like, that can happen in real life, and then we'll have something to laugh about, right? If we were in for, like, man, that was crazy, or, you know, whatever, funny, or insightful, whatever, like, situation may have occurred, and that's, the Zoom call is absolutely, and even those tables, like you were saying, like where if they're all filled and everyone's chatting, it's like they create their own, almost like a little echo chamber. They're very isolated, very safe, I guess you could say.
And chances are, you know everybody on the Zoom call. I think that's the other piece about when you go to a user group, you're throwing yourselves out into this, I don't want to say abyss, but, you know, into an environment of which everything's reset. Everybody is there to kind of do the same thing. Sure, you may know some people and whatnot, but, you know, the opportunity that's there for you to just kind of grow and meet so many more people and really gain those experiences and then understand where to go. I mean, it could have a very impactful effect on your career that you might not realize today, but you certainly, it could change, you know, 3 or 4 years down the road.
For sure. And I'd like to just like slightly change gears and just kind of curious, because this is part of the inspiration question, that type of thing, is like, what did you do before that conference? I know that you mentioned you do some freelancing before we started recording. Like, is that what you were doing, or were you in a full-time position somewhere?
Yeah, I've been in software engineering in the web space for 25 years. I started at Allstate. I was part of their whole .com boom and did a bunch of .NET stuff, architecture stuff, big old company enterprise stuff. That led me to Microsoft, and I bounced around in there. I did some consulting, did some advocacy, did some product work, bounced around. Then I went to a Bulgarian company and worked for a company called Telerik. Was a product manager there, owned a few products, many of which people have used today. And then we spun out, did our own thing, kind of along the side, created that conference, and it kind of grew and grew and grew and took more and more and more time and more money, which is all fantastic for the community. And then this pandemic thing happened and destroyed everything. Kind of been rebuilding back since then. And on the side of that, I have a company called Unspecified, and we do web engineering, software engineering work. So got a few clients there. It's kind of ebb and flowed as time has gone on, and kind of dealing with, both companies and living the founder life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had like a very interesting career. Like, could you tell me a little more about your time at Microsoft? Like, you were talking about dev advocacy and those type of things. And the reason why I kind of zoomed in on that is just because that, to me, like DevRel, advocacy, all that, seems like it's a very new thing. Like, to me, it just feels like it's like a couple of years ago or something it really started picking up. Like, what was it, back then, at Microsoft?
I don't think there was really a name for it. Back in the day, I used to call them evangelists. It was a sort of a new role. I have always been in engineering. I've always been a software architect. I've always shipped really big and worked with really big kind of Fortune 100 companies. So I ended up getting into the evangelism space because I was doing a bunch of product work, and it was this interesting bridge between product work and kind of consulting, but really just I was passionate about community, and I was given some free reign to like go activate. Sounds so salesy, but really get people like understanding kind of the why of products and how to use them, whatnot. So unfortunately, that role kind of evolved into a sales marketing nightmare, which is when I got out and went back and did product work. So it's an interesting role. I think when the company understands it and uses it well, you can really create a community of people who are passionate about your product, your service. When it's not, goes south pretty quick. So fun role. I wasn't in it long. I don't know. I did maybe a couple of years before, but I think I was at Microsoft 9 years. And I did more engineering than I did, speaking on stage.
That's cool. Absolutely. And that kind of like shoehorns into the next question, because I know you had mentioned that I don't remember if it was on air or off air now, but you were saying, at that conference, you guys like sort of reserve the different parts of the resorts and that. And LaRocca, had mentioned that he noticed that you guys always seem to hold it in, if hopefully I'm saying this correctly, at Kalahari Resorts.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that before. And when you were talking about water parks and stuff, I was like, oh, maybe that's what it's about. Like, is that why you chose like Kalahari Resorts for that conference, to sort of have like more of that resort, I suppose, feeling?
Yeah. So it's twofold. Again, geographically, the Kalahari sits in a town called the Wisconsin Dells, and the Wisconsin Dells is in the middle of the kind of state, in the middle of nowhere. And what I was really wanting to do was to get everybody away from where they were. Because if I held it in a city like Madison or Chicago, then people would be apt to go back. What I really want to do is people to come. Today, you would kind of call it a destinational thing. Come, be present, then leave. And in the Dells is a tourist trap of America. It is nothing but water parks, water park after water park after water park that sits in the middle of a cornfield. The Kalahari happens to be one that has the largest convention center. that's kind of how we ended up there. It was centrally located between Twin Cities, Madison, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Chicago. It's actually a horrible place to try to get to if you really want to fly into it, because you've got to fly and drive. But, you go and you have this beautiful resort. You have a water park that's attached to it. You got good food. You got a interesting town of attractions for tourists. And then we just started, I've stayed with them since.
So like you said, like it's kind of difficult to get to. And so I know that you guys have like a fair bit of sort of tech celebrities, like sort of the tech Twitter crowd that show up. I believe Kevin Powell, friend of the show's there. I think Anya Kubo, I believe, as well. And a few others, of course. Those are just off the top of my head. And so the sort of value of that in particular, like the celebrity angle, do you think that it brings a lot of people there? And like, especially since it is like a little bit more difficult to get to kind of thing, like, is it a huge thing for the community? Is it, like that influencer angle, I guess? Like, what's your thought on that?
This is going to sound really bad, but I don't really care who you are or what you are. Really, we just look for the practitioner to be involved. Everybody's got something to offer to the community. Kevin's a good friend. We've gotten to know each other, talk quite a bit. Love the guy, love what he does. Does he have an audience? Sure. Does somebody like Kevin necessarily sell tickets? Yeah, maybe. Yes, no. Conferences are, there's a physical aspect, a time aspect, a cost aspect of getting to it. And so we're just trying to get, practitioners who want to help one another, much like us talking about people joining Discord. Who are the people who really want to get involved? And that could be a Kevin Powell, a me, a no name, if you will. They all are the ones that matter. I think our kind of unique angle in this is, it's a good time to bring the family, and you get to do some family things. You get to do some geeky things, get to get away, get to be unbothered by the kind of the daily work thing in a place that's, not a cringy ass, giant convention center.
No, just sitting there in a boardroom.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it's a big ass convention center, but it's not like one of the McCormick places or one of these giant union-run, humongous conglomerates of robotic things and tresses and all that. Like, we don't do any of that stuff.
As a new dad, what's the family angle of that conference? Like, so what do you guys do for the families? What's different than a regular conference?
Well, there's kids there. That would be step one. Well, congratulations on being new dad.
Thank you.
I have an 18-year-old getting ready to go to school, so time flies, I'll tell you that much. For me, you could think of the conference like this. There's basically two tracks, a family track, a professional track. The family track has, I think this year, maybe around 20 sessions. Some of them are taught by kids. Some are taught by adults. The goal is to just create exposure to things that are STEM related. Having said that, we're pretty loose with what it is. So I don't want to play like this is some like giant STEM conference. Sometimes this year it's like how to better take advantage of Canva and some of the different tools that, I'll say that kids are using these days. So that track sits on the side. We do a bunch of fun stuff tailored towards kids. We'll probably have 300 spouses and kids that are there. And, at times we get back together like a happy hour or the water park. So even though they're kind of situationally, like next to one another, if you will, physically next to one another, try to bring things back together because it's big for me. It's like, I don't want to just know you. Like I get to see you all day, right? But I also want to meet your spouse, your kids, whatnot. And not that you have to have kids to come to that conference. That's not the case by any stretch. It's about half the people. But it is a place where you can get kind of who is the full version of Clark, right? How do we, your kids certainly do, but my kids don't want to listen to anything I have to say, but they will listen to other kids. They will listen to other adults too. And so that's where, we have this ability to create a little exposure onto something that maybe, will reconnect you in a way that, you were unable to do. And we've seen that happen a few times, whatnot. So it's kind of cool. It's cool that there's, I would say families a first-class citizen, if you will. It's interesting to watch a sponsor sit there and sweat when a 7-year-old is kind of drilling them as to what their product is and why should it matter. Sometimes some of those kids, that turns into internships. So sometimes for sponsors, they're like, oh, I get to meet the whole family. I can sell the family on why you should come work for me faster than I could if, I went through the, interview process. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to have the family there. It's cool to see kids. I got one that's going to work for us this summer. She started coming when she was 8. Now she's 18. She's going to do a little internship, right? And it's cool, right? It's a part of our lives. And maybe some of them, I think back to 2010, it's still pretty true today, but it's like, how do you get more women in tech? They were like, go get the nurse and just make the nurse an engineer. And you're like, I don't understand that. That's not going to work. But, when they're kids, you have the ability to show everybody, here's some exposure. This is what mom and dad do. This is, these are options for you in life. You get to see your parents speak if they're a speaker. They're all pretty cool things.
That's a really cool angle. Really interesting.
How is the speaking situation? Is it, sponsors only? Is it like, hey, I have a cool idea. Do I present it? What is the speaking situation at that?
We have an open call for speakers that runs for 2.5 months. So in the case of Wisconsin, it opens in January. It'll run until March 1st, maybe. And then there's a voting process that kind of solidifies it all. There are some sponsors, depending on the level, that they get in through a sponsorship, but that's we don't take a lot of sponsors overall. So it's mostly it's 98% people who have come through to call for speakers. And that's, those are people who are new, seasoned, near, far, kids, adults. It's all over the board. And we have this year, probably about 110 speakers overall. So quite a few.
Wow. So what would you say is the most, I know you mentioned STEM, but what would you say is the most sort of common topics that people want to bring up? Are people trying to, sell us on their product? Are people trying to show the next revolutionary thing that they've invented? I know you mentioned that some people are, interested because a kid or whomever is grilling them and they get an internship potentially there, or, they get to convince somebody and their whole family to potentially work for them. So what's the most sort of common topics that people do talk about?
On the professional side, it is software engineering across the web spectrum. And every year that kind of ebbs and flows as to kind of what's hot, if you will, or at least what's on people's minds. This year, there's a good chunk of AI. We try to keep it kind of balanced as much as we can. AI, there'll be some JavaScript frameworky stuff like Svelte and React, Vue. There'll be some database stuff. This year, architecture stuff. AI and architecture kind of came out of the blue this year. So that's pretty cool to see. There's always soft skill stuff, like just how do you be a better human? But it changes. It changes year to year. And what I tell folks is it's we have software engineers. What's your unique perspective? What's your unique experience that you can offer, especially today, given that so much is available online? You need to understand what it is. Essentially, you want to be what you can't Google, right? If I can already Google how to use React, I don't really need you to come and tell people how to use React. What's more important is maybe you have learned, 15 things that you wish you would have known about React before you started how to use React. Well, now you can advance somebody faster in a space that can be interactive with one another, right? So it changes every year. It's certainly different, but it's typically in that kind of full stack web space from pretty much. We don't have any guardrails up other than to say, be geeky, don't be what you can Google.
Fair enough. It sounds like you get better insight that way too, because you can always just, boot up that Udemy course for, this is how you install React. It's okay, well, I don't need a Udemy course in person.
Right. Yeah. What's the point? What's the value prop of coming to that conference if all you're going to do is that Udemy thing. Now, it's not to say that we don't have workshops. JD's doing, a Vue workshop, and that's different because in that aspect, you're going to spend 8 hours doing Vue and get hands-on keyboard, and there's going to be a tribe of people that you get to be hands-on with. So that just interaction model is forcing you to kind of go through the steps. But yeah, if you're doing how to create React, like that's of no value. It's a value online. It's just not a value in person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those more transactional.
Yeah.
Like, how do I do this? Here's the 3 commands or whatever it is for what you're doing.
Yeah. And 10 years ago, that was different. I would have said that's equally as important. But today, with how much content has been created and the facilities and AI and whatnot, those become less important in person because they're so easy to get online.
And replay, more importantly, because you're going to forget that command.
Oh, yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, and that was just look, I think it's the right, and it's a great evolution of just where we sit in tech, is that is so freely available in so many ways that great, let's use the time together as humans to do things that humans do really well, which is interact, right? Which is ask questions. So really trying to emphasize on use our time together wisely, such that you can really advance to one another.
Absolutely. So with that, there's going to be a lot of people, I'm sure, listening to this that are interested in this, and they're going to want to get involved. And I know you mentioned that you do take some sponsorships. There is that open call for a couple of months. And so that's just sort of the root of my next question here is, how can people participate and get involved? How do sponsors work? Those type of things. Should people be spreading the word or something like that? Is there an online component to this if someone can't attend, et cetera?
All the things, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the things. Clark, tell me all the things. Yeah, so right now, our schedule's out. It's live. The next event is in July in the Wisconsin Dells. Sponsorships are open, so give me all your sponsorships. You can go to thatconference.com and hit the sponsorship link and click the button, and you'll be greeted with me. Tickets are on sale. We've got, this week, although this is probably not coming out this week. Find me. There may be a discount code. There may not be a discount code. There's one running at the moment, but that doesn't really do anybody any good. You said spreading the word. I think now more than ever in tech, the best thing you can do for whatever group that you're affiliated with, whatever Discord, whatnot, is start to open the doors for others to come in. We're also fragmented at the moment, right? There's not really a lot of water coolers, if you will. People aren't necessarily going to the office. They're on a Zoom call. And they've kind of forgotten that there's these community things that happen. And the reality is these community things are done by people like myself who have day jobs, who don't have marketing teams. And that groundswell, that organic growth is really vital to people coming and attending and being part of. And sure, we have a Slack group and a Discord group and a website, and tickets are on sale. But, if you're listening, check us out. Also help spread the word. And, same is true for whatever you're affiliated with. Help, share their word as well.
Can I give a suggestion to the audience out there right now with the conferences like this? If you're thinking about going, maybe you have a small group of other developers around you, suggest to go together and meet up for the first time at a conference like this. I think that's a great way, first of all, to spread the word about that conference. And second of all, to just take full advantage of it, right? Going alone is fine. In my opinion, I think that there's a huge value in that as well. But going together with a group of friends could be even more fun. And just make sure, the only caveat to what I have to say here is that don't be the cool kids table, and don't alienate anyone just because you have a little group of people. Participate in everything, and maybe split up sometimes and find new people and stuff. Just a little suggestion for people out there. I think that's a great way to kind of put your foot in the door here and have fun.
Yeah, you're spot on. And a number of companies do send their engineering teams or a portion of their team. That's where you build those bonds. That's where you really get to meet people. In this case, you might be meeting your spouse as well. You're right. Don't over-index. Be part of the experience. Open up that circle, if you will, and and meet other people, right? Otherwise, this will sound bad, right? You don't want to be in the echo chamber, if you will, as to where only these ideas are kind of self-propagated. And that's the whole point of getting together, is because, you're getting out of that echo chamber. But it is that good opportunity to where you can really build those bonds deeper. Let's do it. Let's do it. I think it's just a fantastic way to grow the morale, build your team, get to know one another. And that's when you can become more productive.
Well, I was going to say, like, that's just a great, like, sum up of, because, like, Mike and I, for example, we went to that startup event in Hamilton years ago, and, like, we'll still bring up little things from that here and there, like little funny things that happened or whatever. And it's like, we went to one startup event. Like, we went to one startup event when we were not in the community at all. We were quite literally looking to open up the business, or like maybe had just done so, because we run a web dev agency. And it's just sort of like, why not do more of that, right? And it's sort of like we kind of got caught up in the ecosystem, or the echo chamber, caught up in the day-to-day of like, I'm barely answering people as it is, I can't do anything else. There's certainly value in, again, just like a 2-hour event like that was in person.
Yeah. I mean, those moments where you're like, oh, I had a great idea when I was in the shower, right? It's always when you step away where the things happen, and you have to just kind of create that space for it to. You have to kind of cultivate it, and then that law of attraction that starts to happen. Like, you get involved in one of these things. I mean, I was talking with, this was years ago, we have this thing called Open Spaces. Open Spaces is this unstructured conversation. Anything goes, and you talk about whatever you want. And I was deep in this felt, and I happened to be very passionate about it. And a bunch of people came, and I was just like, hey, I will gladly kind of teach you what we've done. We built our platform on it, whatnot. Here we go, whole consulting agency decides to switch from React to Svelte just because of that conversation. They hadn't seen it. They're like, oh, this makes way more sense. Like, why wouldn't we just start using this? It's like, that's why I left React. Like, it's easier.
Goddamn right.
Right. So then you just, once you become open, if you will, to like the outside things and saying, okay, maybe there's other stuff out there, and you start getting involved, you're like, okay, all right, right on.
Yeah, it's the passion that you kind of miss, right? When you're like, you're saying you're passionate about Svelte at the moment, and you're like, you have these conversations with people. Whereas you can get passion across in a blog post or a Udemy course for sure, but the person has to seek it out, kind of thing, right? And they have to kind of be like, well, is someone what are they Googling? Is someone passionate about Svelte? Like, why would they do that? So like that sort of like human effect and that in-person effect is like a huge component.
Yeah, spot on.
I know we've been talking about that conference, of course, but there is one upcoming as we speak. So it's the Wisconsin 2024 conference. And, I'd like you to take the floor, Clark, and just sort of like let people know what's up and about what's coming up for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. July 29th, August 1st, 4 days. Tickets are on sale. Go to thatconference.com, whack Wisconsin, or just thatconference.com and click on the event. It's going to be fun. They all are. They're fun. We learn a lot. They're tiring. You meet a lot of new friends. And that's how that works. That's the getting out and investing in oneself. That's the getting out and being open to new things. And we'd love to have you a part of it. Join our Slack or our Discord. Either way, get to it on our website. So it's the short pitch. You've heard enough. Just come. Tell others.
Will do. And we will, of course, be putting links to that conference, of course, in the show notes as well. So like, if you, the listener right now, if you want to, get involved, want to check it out right away, you can go check that out on HTML, in the show notes. And, as a kind of a final hurrah, if you will, Clark, if you have anything else you'd like to promote, I know we've been talking about that conference, but if you have anything on the go, anything else that you want to talk about, your Twitter, your X, whatever they call it now, whatever the kids call it, your Canva profile, if that's a thing, please take the floor and go for it.
I started I'll call it a live stream, and I'm calling it the Hallway Track. We're doing it live on all the things, the Twitters, the LinkedIns, the YouTubes. And it's just me having a conversation with friends. It's really the spirit after like the Hallway Track at that conference. Like, you get into these conversations that you love to have and you wish there were more of them. And so it's literally me calling up folks that I've been friends with, that I've met at the conference, whatnot, and us having a live stream and just a no holds bar, don't care what the topic is. We're not talking tech. We're just talking life like you would in the hallway. So, come find me on there. Maybe win a few things. Go to that conference.
Awesome.
That's all. Be a good human. Go build your tribe.
And we will certainly be linking those live streams or a place that you can find them in the show notes as well. And Clark, unless you have anything else to add, I'd like to thank you for coming on. You've been a great guest. And Mike, unless you have anything else to ask.
No. Thank you so much, Clark, for coming on. That conference sounds awesome. Maybe that's something that we'll attend at some point.
Should bring the show. We'll give you some places to hook up to a microphone.
Oh, damn. We might take you up on that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I hope that you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. And unfortunately, it has come to the end of the show, and it is time to end. But we'd like to thank Clark one last time for coming on the show. Great guest, great insights into community and the importance of that, and also into that conference, of course, whether it's the quickly upcoming one in Wisconsin 2024, or just about the event in general, because again, this happens year over year. So thank you to Clark one last time. And remember, if you want 10% off those Wisconsin 2024 tickets, if this episode convinced you, hey, I want to go check this thing out, please use our promo code to get 10% off. That's HTML, all the things in capitals, no spaces, no hyphens, no nonsense. That'll be in the show description as well as in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. Now, if you'd like to support the show and you want to do so on Patreon, you can do that. That's patreon.com/htmlallthethings. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons, Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Joshua via silvio.us, and Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. And remember, we have a Scrimba affiliate link, so if you want to learn with their interactive media player code editor, please go and do so. And our affiliate link may be a discount code. It is still being sorted out as of the recording of this. If it is a discount code or it has any sort of discount affiliated with it, those details will be on htmlallthethings.com in the show notes for this episode. We'd also like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on HTML All the Things. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Now, without further ado, because for some reason I've changed the pacing of this outro. I've never done pacing like this before, but it feels good. I hope you like it. Feels good. Watch, it'll just sound weird. But anyway, feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and we are signing off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.